the moment the man responsible for abducting a young woman and subjecting her to unimaginable horrors was sentenced to 60 years in prison, a wave of relief washed over the community. They believed that he was finally off the streets, no longer posing a threat to anyone. Little did they suspect that this was merely the beginning, as the sinister secrets of his atrocious acts were yet to be unveiled. The 60-year sentence turned out to be just the tip of the iceberg as shocking revelations continued to emerge, unraveling a twisted tale that took years to fully comprehend. Who was this man, and what were the deeply concealed secrets he held? Texas, the second largest state in the United States, is renowned for its diverse landscape, rich history, and vibrant culture. From the iconic deserts of West Texas to the bustling urban centers like Houston and Dallas, the state offers a plethora of attractions. However, Texas has also witnessed its fair share of notorious crimes. For years, Interstate 45 in Texas has been a haunting place, instilling fear in the hearts of many. The highway that stretches between Galveston and Houston is notorious for its connection to numerous unsolved murders throughout the years. Deputy Chief Josh Rogers from Texas has stated that 1997 was an especially deadly year, with a high number of incidents occurring along this route. However, the question remains, what truly happened here? To delve into this matter, let us begin with the case involving Laura Smitha. On April 3rd, 1997, at approximately 9 o'clock a.m., 12-year-old Laura Smitha asked her mother for permission to go for a jog alone. Little did her mother know that granting this request would lead to enduring pain. Laura, who was raised in the city of Friendswood, Texas, by her parents Bob and Gay Snither, had a happy childhood alongside her younger brother David. She was known for her kindness and gentle nature. Laura excelled academically and possessed a remarkable talent for ballet. Her dream of becoming a ballerina was on the verge of becoming a reality, as she had recently been accepted into the prestigious Houston Ballet Academy. While preparing breakfast, Laura's mother agreed to her request, understanding that Laura had been diligently working on her cardio to enhance her ballet skills. However, as time passed and Laura failed to return, the parents grew increasingly anxious. Laura had never been away for such an extended period, and as she was always under their watchful eye due to being homeschooled, they sensed that something was amiss. Laura's father scoured the neighborhood in search of her, but there was no sign of his daughter. Growing more concerned, they reached out to relatives and friends, hoping for any information regarding Laura's whereabouts, but their efforts yielded no answers. With Laura still missing, they made the difficult decision to contact the Friendswood police and report her as a missing person. As the police initiated their investigation, the community rallied around Laura's family, joining forces to aid in the search. Flyers with Laura's photograph were distributed and residents in the area were questioned in the hopes of uncovering any leads. The outpouring of support and love from the community deeply touched Laura's parents, as they witnessed firsthand the genuine care and concern for their beloved daughter. The following morning, law enforcement officers were actively searching for the missing little girl. Some officers conducted thorough searches on foot through the nearby woods, while helicopters were deployed to search from above. Unfortunately, no significant leads were found. However, despite this setback, the community remained resilient and supportive. Hundreds of volunteers joined forces with Laura's family to assist in the search for the 12-year-old. Over the course of a week, approximately 6,000 volunteers participated in the search campaign. Surprisingly, each passing day brought even more volunteers and improved tracking techniques, such as the utilization of infrared cameras to uncover potential clues. In a remarkable display of dedication, a search and rescue team, along with their specially trained dogs, traveled all the way from Dallas to offer their assistance. These remarkable canines, with their exceptional sense of smell, spent an entire day meticulously sniffing around Laura's home, picking up scents from distances as far as 800 yards away. The local police were working tirelessly, and their efforts were further bolstered by the involvement of the National Coast Guard and FBI. Initially, the authorities believed that Laura may have become lost in the woods. However, as the investigation progressed, suspicions of foul play began to arise. In order to sustain the search efforts, the community organized candlelight rallies and vigils in honor of Laura. Despite these collective efforts, An entire week passed without any significant progress in Laura's case. On Sunday, April 20th, 1997, the community convened at Friendswood High School to discuss the next steps. During the meeting, the police chief received a phone call that visibly troubled him, causing concern among the attendees. However, they remained unaware of the details. Later that evening, around 10 p.m., Laura's parents were informed of a horrifying discovery. Earlier that same day, a father and son, while walking their dog, stumbled upon the badly decomposed body of a young girl in a muddy area near a pond in Pasadena, just 12 miles away from where Laura had disappeared. The girl was found wearing only a pair of socks, leading the police to suspect that it could be Laura. Subsequently, the autopsy confirmed their worst fears. 17 days after her disappearance, Laura was tragically found, marking a heartbreaking conclusion to the search efforts. Due to Laura's prolonged time in the water, investigators were unable to determine the exact cause of her death and were uncertain if she had been physically assaulted. The tragic loss of this young girl deeply saddened and shocked the entire Friendswood community. Alongside the grief, there was also a prevailing sense of fear as people worried that a dangerous individual might still be out there, potentially targeting more victims. In an urgent attempt to gather leads, the police began questioning sex offenders in the area. Despite numerous uncertainties, a suspect quickly emerged. This individual had been released from an Oklahoma prison just 6 months prior to Laura's murder, after serving a 10-year sentence for 2 physical assaults. At the time of Laura's disappearance, he was employed as an equipment operator in Windsor State, Friendswood. Strangely, he left work around the same time Laura went missing, and returned 30 minutes later. When investigators examined his truck, they discovered fibers from his replacement floor mats that matched those found on Laura's socks. Despite ongoing efforts to gather stronger evidence against him, the man remained free, frequently traveling between Houston, where he worked, and Oklahoma, where his mother resided. However, it didn't take long for another incident to occur. Just 2 months later, on July 15, 1997, in Denton, Texas, a university town along the same stretch of interstate, a 20-year-old woman named Kelly Cox vanished. Kelly would typically spend her mornings studying at the University of North Texas and the rest of her day caring for her daughter, Alexis. On that fateful day, Kelly prepared everything for her daughter, packed her bag with necessary items, and rushed out the door. She dropped off her 19-month-old daughter with a babysitter before heading to a field trip for her criminology class at a Denton jail, accompanied by her classmates. Kelly parked her car across from the police station and, as a precaution, hid a spare key in a magnetic box underneath her car. After securing her belongings, including her phone, in the car as advised by her professor, Kelly decided to explore the jail on a guided tour. Once the tour concluded around noon, she promptly left because she had an important test at the university. However, when she attempted to unlock her car door with the spare key, she encountered an unexpected problem. Despite having checked the key the previous night, it mysteriously failed to work. This left Kelly unable to access her cell phone, which was locked inside the car. In order to seek assistance, she walked to a nearby gas station and utilized a payphone to contact her boyfriend, Lawrence Harris. Kelly requested that he bring another key since the one she possessed had suddenly become ineffective. Following the call, she entered the gas station to quench her thirst. Approximately 45 minutes later, Lawrence arrived at the gas station only to find Kelly's car still parked in the lot, but Kelly herself was nowhere to be found. Furthermore, the key box and the spare key were also missing. Concerned for her well-being, Lawrence searched for Kelly and eventually contacted her mother to inquire if she had returned home. Unfortunately, Kelly had not. As time passed, Kelly's family grew increasingly worried. By 5:30 p.m. that afternoon, it became evident that something was amiss. Kelly was scheduled to pick up her 19-month-old daughter Alexis from the babysitter's house at that time, but she failed to appear. This raised significant alarm since Kelly was known for being a responsible mother despite her young age. It seemed highly unlikely that she would neglect to collect Alexis or make alternative arrangements if necessary. Consequently, a missing persons report was promptly filed, prompting investigators to initiate a search for the young mother, Their initial course of action involved interviewing individuals close to Kelly in order to gather relevant information. After successfully passing 4 polygraph tests, Lawrence was eliminated as a suspect. Surprisingly, it was a turn of events when investigators acted upon a tip that led them to a different individual, a man who had been a suspect in the Laura sniffer case. Despite not residing in Denton, the gas station received placed him at the location on the day Kelly disappeared. Due to his status as a sex offender, he became a prime suspect, prompting the police to search his vehicle for Kelly's fingerprints. Strangely, they found none, leaving them without any further evidence to link him to the disappearance. It remained a mystery as to how this man, despite being suspected, managed to elude capture each time. Who was he and what was his story? Unfortunately, without answers to these questions, the case eventually went cold with no leads, witnesses, or surveillance footage. For many years, Kelly's mother experienced profound sadness whenever a body was discovered along the notorious Texas highway. She clung to the hope that one day Kelly would return home, but sadly, that day never arrived. Kelly's disappearance took a toll on her mother and stepfather, particularly as they had to raise young Alexis on their own. However, the most challenging part was explaining to Alexis that her mother was unlikely to come back and provide her with warmth and maternal love. Despite the passing years, Kelly never reappeared for her daughter. Following in her mother's footsteps, Alexis attended the same university, holding on to the belief that her mother might one day return. Throughout all those years, Kelly's family never lost hope. They continued to share her story and tirelessly displayed her picture wherever they could. Unfortunately, even after numerous efforts, Kelly never found her way back home. However, the shocks were far from over, as just 11 days after Kelly went missing in Oklahoma, another young woman was on the verge of disappearing. On June 26, 1997, around midnight, a patrol officer from the Bethany Police Department noticed a white neon Dodge left at a car wash. Initially, it didn't raise any suspicions for the officer. However, upon returning later and finding the car still there, his suspicions grew. While approaching the vehicle, he observed that the key remained in the ignition and the car door was ajar. Swiftly, he transmitted the license plate number to headquarters and ascertained that the car belonged to Tiffany Johnston, a 17-year-old. Upon inspecting the interior, he discovered Tiffany's purse and stumbled upon a phone number belonging to her mother, Kathy, who resided in Antarctica, the considerable 60 miles away from Bethany. Consequently, the investigators promptly contacted Ryan, Tiffany's husband, who was equally unaware of his wife's whereabouts. It was becoming increasingly evident that something was amiss. Ryan disclosed to the officer that Tiffany had left her part-time job at a restaurant around 2 p.m. on that day, excited to celebrate their 3-month anniversary. However, she was only expected to meet him at 11 o'clock p.m. On her way home, Tiffany had made a stop at the Sunshine Car Wash to clean her white neon Dodge. Nevertheless, when Ryan went to meet her later that night, he discovered no trace of her and she was absent from their residence as well. Filled with concern and anxiety, he initially contemplated contacting the authorities but ultimately decided to wait a little longer, hoping that Tiffany would return on her own. However, even before the police could initiate a search for Tiffany, they received devastating news. Just a day after her disappearance, on July 27, 1997, near I-40 in Gregory Road, searchers looking for another missing girl fortuitously stumbled upon the lifeless body of a young Caucasian woman. Upon the arrival of the police, they already harbored suspicions that it could be Tiffany, and their fears were confirmed when Ryan identified her from the photographs. Tragically, she was discovered wearing only a swimsuit, with all her other garments removed, although the exact time of her demise could not be determined during the autopsy. It revealed that she had been subjected to physical assault and strangulation. Additionally, unknown DNA was found on her body, which was collected and preserved as evidence. In such a scenario, anyone could potentially be a suspect and suspicion fell upon someone very close to Tiffany. However, it didn't take long to discover that Tiffany was last seen at the car wash at 6 o'clock p.m. During that time, Ryan was at work and he had been there from 3 o'clock p.m. to 11 o'clock p.m. analyzing the timeline. The police realized that it didn't make sense for Tiffany to have been abducted from the busy car wash. If someone had forcefully taken her, there would likely have been a significant struggle. However, the area where the car was found showed no signs of a struggle, and even the car itself was unlocked. Nothing appeared disturbed in the vicinity. This led the police to consider the possibility that Tiffany willingly got into the car with someone she knew and left with them. While the investigation was ongoing, a few days later, Kathy, Tiffany's mother, received a phone call from a man named William Reese, who she knew from her town of Anadarko. Although they hadn't met in person, William's mother was good friends with Tiffany's mother. He called Kathy shortly after Tiffany's death to offer condolences, but little did she know about the hidden secrets. As time passed, the investigation made no progress and the case eventually ended up in the cold case files. With the ongoing murders of women in the area, the entire community began to question when this horrifying game would come to an end. Just 3 weeks after Tiffany's murder, another tragedy struck Lamar, Texas. Jessica Kane, born on August 28, 1979, brought immense joy to her parents, CH and Susie Kane. With a passion for sports, she held the position of drill team captain at O'Connell High School in Galveston, Texas. On August 16, 1997, after participating in a musical review in Dickinson and attending a cast party at Ben Egan on Bay Area Boulevard, Jessica failed to return home after a night out with friends. When she couldn't be found at home the next morning, Jessica's mother panicked and urgently woke up her father. They immediately began trying to reach Jessica. Despite their best efforts, they were unable to locate her, so they reached out to several friends who had been with Jessica the night before. All of them had the same story. Jessica left the party around 1:30 a.m. and no one had heard from her since. Jessica's parents became increasingly worried, especially when her father discovered her car parked near the Lumans exit on the freeway. Her belongings were still inside, but Jessica was nowhere to be found. Filled with concern, he immediately contacted the police to report her as missing. Search parties were organized once again, with over 100 volunteers coming through the marshes and brush on foot. During this difficult time, Jessica's parents found comfort in connecting with Bob and Gay Smitha, the parents of Laura Smitha, who had also gone missing. Despite reliving their own nightmare, the Smithas stood strong in supporting Jessica's parents and actively participated in the search efforts. They shared the concern of whether the person responsible for Jessica's disappearance was the same individual who had taken their own daughter's life. Despite extensive searches conducted by law enforcement in the community, there were no signs of Jessica. The police began considering the possibility of foul play and expressed a grim belief that finding Jessica alive was unlikely. However, amidst the ongoing search, a new story emerged about another case where the victim had managed to survive. On May 16, 1997, 3 months prior to Jessica's disappearance, a 19-year-old mother named Sandra Sopor had a disturbing encounter. She had stopped at a convenience store in Webster, Texas, off I-45, and noticed a man staring at her in the parking lot. Later, at a Waffle House across the street, she saw the same man again. He followed her to the store and offered to help her with her flat tires. Suddenly, he pulled out a knife and forcefully took Sandra into this white pickup truck. Inside the truck, the man overpowered her, tied her wrists, and drove along Interstate 45. Sandra, overwhelmed by fear, made a shocking realization that the truck door was not locked. In a desperate bid for freedom, she mustered all her strength, broke free from the restraints, and leaped out of the moving truck. Unfortunately, her daring escape resulted in severe injuries, prompted by the urgency. She was swiftly transported to a nearby hospital where the authorities were promptly notified and the incident was duly reported. In October 1997, 5 months later, a meeting with Friendswood police led Webster investigators to realize that Sandra's description of her abductor matched a truck they had previously searched in Laura's case. On October 16, 1997, during a lineup, Sandra quickly identified the man who had abducted her as William Reese. This raised the question of who he was and whether he was the same suspect from Laura's case in April 1997. William Lewis Reese, born on July 1, 1959 in Oklahoma and raised in Yukon in Anadarko, was one of 13 siblings. Due to his family's financial struggles, he had to drop out of school in the 9th grade and began working as a farm laborer. He had 2 short-lived marriages. In April 1986, William kidnapped a 19-year-old daughter of a Texas sheriff's deputy, resulting in his arrest and charges. However, he was released on bail. Just a month later, while still out on bond, he physically assaulted another woman, leading to another arrest. He faced trial for both crimes, was found guilty, and received a 25-year prison sentence. However, he appealed his conviction and a criminal court reviewed his case, identifying procedural errors that resulted in a reduction of his sentence. He was granted parole in October 1996, approximately 9.5 years into his sentence. This release occurred just 6 months before Laura's disappearance. After leaving prison, William moved into his mother's home in Anadarko, Oklahoma. Returning to the case, William was promptly arrested in October 1997 and charged with kidnapping Sarah Sapar. He pleaded not guilty and was incarcerated, but he was still not linked to the murders of the other girls. Despite his denial of kidnapping Sarah and slashing her tires, investigators remained determined to establish a connection between him and Laura's murder. Deputy Chief Josh Rogers made a significant discovery while searching William's apartment. Among the items found was a multicolored horse blanket, which matched the colors on one of Laura's socks. Despite finding fibers from Laura's socks on William's floor mats, the district attorney, DA, at the time did not believe it was enough evidence to charge him with Laura's murder. However, the determined Friendswood detectives continued their investigation. They delved into records to trace William's movements during the previous summer and uncovered potential connections to other unsolved cases. Their dedication to solving these mysteries was unwavering. The investigation took an intriguing turn when investigators found a fuel bill in Denton on the same date and location as Kelly Cox's disappearance. This was the first time Kelly's mother, Jan, had heard about William, and now Denton police had him on their radar as well. Further records revealed that William had used a payphone in the town where Tiffany's body was discovered less than an hour after she went missing. Additionally, the owner of a car wash confirmed that William was a frequent customer upon seeing his picture. This new evidence made William the primary suspect in Tiffany's case too. The jury wasted no time in reaching a guilty verdict, and in 1998, William was convicted and sentenced to 60 years for kidnapping Sandra. Finally, after a year, the community felt a sense of relief knowing that William was behind bars. However, Laura's case, as well as Tiffany's, Kelly's, and Jessica's cases, officially remained unsolved. While residing in Oklahoma, Kathy, the mother of Tiffany, never ceased her efforts to urge investigators to solve her daughter's murder. It took over 10 years for Kathy's persistent calls to finally receive a response. In 2012, retired police chief Lynn Williams joined the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation's cold case team and took on the task of investigating Tiffany's case. Within the evidence box, Lynn discovered DNA evidence from Tiffany's body that had been meticulously preserved throughout the years. Despite 2 unsuccessful tests, Wendy Duke, the supervising criminologist at the OSBI cold case unit, uncovered 2 samples from Tiffany's body that had not been fully utilized in previous testing. Remarkably, she managed to develop a partial male profile from these samples. Duke meticulously compared the known profiles to find a match, and as the team eliminated suspects one by one, they made a shocking discovery. The perpetrator behind Tiffany's murder turned out to be none other than William Reese, an individual connected to Tiffany's family who had even expressed grief over her death. This revelation prompted the Oklahoma District Attorney to believe that there was enough evidence to charge William with Tiffany's murder. After enduring years of waiting, finally found some solace as justice appeared to be within reach. Oklahoma law enforcement shared crucial information with Texas investigators, including the Texas Rangers, who were eager to collaborate with William Reese in order to solve their cases. They made a visit to William in prison, and surprisingly, he agreed to further discussions on the condition that the death penalty would be taken off the table. In exchange for his cooperation in resolving the cases, authorities agreed to this condition. In February 2016, William Reese was transferred from prison to the Friendswood jail after agreeing to provide information regarding 3 Texas cases. Authorities also accompanied him to a remote field south of Friendswood, where he claimed to have disposed of Kelly Cox's. The police dedicated extensive time to working with William, both in jail and out in the field, in their search for Kelly's remains. During this period, he began divulging details to investigators about his encounter with Kelly in Denton. According to William, they had a confrontation in a gas station parking lot after he accidentally bumped into her, causing her to spill her soda on him. During the interview, William confessed to killing Kelly, but there was another shocking revelation. He also disclosed to investigators what happened to Laura on that rainy morning in Friendswood. William claimed that Laura died instantly after he accidentally struck her with his truck. However, he later altered his story, stating that Laura actually survived. According to him, when he attempted to silence her cries, he accidentally broke her neck. Upon examining William's inconsistent statements and behavior, Mary Ellen O'Toole, a retired FBI profiler, suggested that he display traits of psychopathy. She believed that William derived pleasure from the attention he received from law enforcement and the disruption to his routine. During the ongoing search for remains, William continued to confess to each murder, providing specific details about Jessica and Tiffany's cases and disclosing the various locations where he buried their bodies. In March 2016, after 25 days of determined excavation guided by William, a breakthrough occurred. Jessica's remains were discovered at a site in a Houston pasture. However, her parents requested privacy to process the news and lay their daughter to rest. The discovery of Jessica's remains significantly bolstered the credibility of Williams, reigniting the search for Kelly with renewed determination. After 2 more weeks of painstaking effort, Kelly's remains were successfully located at a burial site in Brazoria County. This was an incredibly painful moment for the families who still clung to hope that their daughters might return alive. In July 2016, Reese was extradited from Texas to Oklahoma to stand trial for Johnston's murder. The trial commenced on April 21, 2017, but Reese's defense team filed a motion for a change of venue due to asbestos contamination in the courthouse. An independent examination confirmed the hazardous condition of the building, leading to an adjournment of the trial until June 2019. Meanwhile, Texas prosecutors announced their intention to extradite Reese to their estate for the trials related to Laura Kelly and Jessica's murders once the Oklahoma trial concluded. Tiffany's trial, which had been indefinitely postponed, resumed in May 2021 at the Oklahoma County District Court. On May 28, 2021, the jury found Reese guilty. The judge was straightforward and direct in his words. On August 19, 2021, he handed down a death sentence to the perpetrator for the abduction and murder of Tiffany, despite Williams' cooperation with law enforcement. This harsh punishment was due to his confession containing partially false information and his failure to disclose his true motives and accurate details of the crime. After being convicted in Oklahoma, William faced another trial in Texas in March 2022 for the murders of Laura Smitha, Kelly Cox, and Jessica Kane. It came as no surprise when he pleaded guilty to all 3 murders, and the judge delivered the final blow by sentencing him to life imprisonment in June 2022. Justice has finally caught up with him for the devastating crimes he committed against these innocent lives. For years, families have longed for answers about their missing loved ones, enduring the agony of uncertainty. The person responsible for these crimes coldly kept these secrets hidden, only revealing them when it served his own motives. It is disheartening to witness such selfishness. Now, we can only hope that armed with the truth, the families can begin the journey of healing. Providing their loved ones with a proper burial, long overdue, may offer some solace after enduring years of pain. Upon graduating from college, entering the real world opens up a new chapter in life for many young adults. This was exactly the case for Grace Millane, a 21-year-old from Essex. After earning her degree from Lincoln University, she embarked on an exhilarating journey, exploring various places and meeting new people across the globe. However, the excitement took a tragic turn just before her 22nd birthday on December 1st, 2018. The man involved in unusual activities and the events that unfolded on that evening can be traced back to Auckland, the largest city in New Zealand. Known for its stunning harbors, vibrant culture, and lively atmosphere, Auckland attracts people from all corners of the world, seeking a blend of modern living and natural wonders. Grace Milling, a 21-year-old tourist from England, was one such visitor who came to experience the tranquility of nature and indulge in Auckland's delectable cuisine. Unfortunately, in 2018, Auckland became infamous for a horrific crime that occurred during Grace's visit. Imagine a typical Tinder date turning into the gravest mistake of your life. Well, that's precisely what happened to Grace Milling on December 1st, 2018. Before delving into the details, let's get acquainted with Grace herself. Born on December 2nd, 1996, in Essex, England, Grace was the youngest of 3 children with 2 older brothers named Michael and Dick Lynn. She was a cheerful and outgoing individual who cherished her family dearly. With a sociable and optimistic personality, Grace always sought to make the most out of life. After completing high school, she pursued a bachelor's degree in advertising and marketing at the University of Lincoln. During her time at university, Grace not only worked various jobs to save money, but also formed lasting friendships and built strong connections. One of Grace's acquaintances, Jeff Kinworthy, emphasized the vibrant and lively nature of Grace during this period. Grace possessed a deep passion for painting due to her immense creativity and artistic abilities. She dedicated a significant amount of time to creating paintings and took great pleasure in sharing them with others. Grace's thoughtfulness in expressing herself through her art was greatly admired by those around her. In September 2018, Grace successfully completed her degree and proudly donned a cap and gown. Instead of immediately assuming adult responsibilities, she eagerly anticipated a new adventure before embarking on the next chapter of her life. Grace had diligently saved up for an entire year to embark on a backpacking tour and was fully prepared for the exciting journey that lay ahead. Following her graduation, Grace became known for her compassion and kindness. Prior to commencing her trip, she undertook a truly special act. Grace decided to cut off her hair and donated to the Little Princess Trust, an organization that creates wigs for children suffering from cancer. In October 2018, filled with anticipation, Grace bid farewell to her family home and set off on her travels. The spirited graduate departed from Heathrow Airport, ready to embark on her first major adventure. Over a span of 6 weeks, Grace explored Peru on a backpacking expedition in South America. Surrounded by fellow travelers from various corners of the globe, she fully immersed herself in the country's breathtaking beauty. Although her time there was brief, Grace cherished every moment, fully aware that it was merely the beginning of her global journey. With great excitement, Grace eagerly shared each photograph with her family, expressing her love for every aspect of her trip. On November 19, 2018, Grace arrived in New Zealand, brimming with enthusiasm to explore the stunning landscapes of the North Island. Unlike her planned excursion in Peru, this time in New Zealand was a solo adventure, granting her the freedom to savor the experience at her own pace. After enjoying 10 marvelous days exploring the North Island, Grace made the decision to celebrate her upcoming 22nd birthday in the lively city of Auckland. She arrived in Auckland on November 30th, 2018, just 2 days before her momentous day. Grace stayed at the Base Backpackers Lodge, a popular hostel on Queen Street, where she shared a room with fellow travelers. In the evening, she socialized with new friends she had met at the hostel, excited for a memorable birthday in the heart of New Zealand's largest metropolis. Despite planning to have an early night, Grace decided to browse the popular dating site Tinder while lying in bed. She hoped to connect with local people and make new connections during her stay. On December 1st, 2018, at approximately 5:37 p.m., Grace left the hostel for a date night in the city center. She wore a knee-length black dress, white shoes, and carried a cute little handbag. Grace had exciting plans to meet someone special she had matched with on Tinder. Initially hesitant about the meetup, Grace and her date eventually decided to go for it after some more chatting. They made a plan to grab some drinks at Sky City, a trendy entertainment complex and casino, just a short distance from her hostel. Just before her date arrived, Grace took a photo in front of the Sky City Christmas tree and sent it to her family back home. After sending the message, Grace looked around and focused on her phone. It was around 5:54 p.m. when a guy wearing sneakers jeans, and a light blue unbuttoned shirt approached her. They shared a quick hug and then headed to a burger joint on the first floor. The evening was off to a great start with no indication of the unexpected events that would unfold. They had dinner, got to know each other better, and instantly clicked. The vibe was so good that they decided to continue the date. Their next stop was a Mexican bar in the complex, where they enjoyed a few more margaritas. They arrived at the Mexican bar just after 7 p.m., spending the next hour and a half sipping on drinks and having a fantastic time together. The night was turning out to be a blast for Grace as she celebrated her upcoming birthday. Around 8:30 p.m., as depicted in the video, the gentleman settled the bill while engaging in conversation with the bartender. Subsequently, he and Grace embarked on their next destination, eager to continue their enjoyable evening adventure. Approximately an hour later, they made a stop at a nearby establishment called Blue Stone Room, a bar situated just a few minutes away from the man's residence. At a certain point, Grace rose from the table, and for an inexplicable reason, the man took hold of her handbag and began searching for something. This behavior raised suspicion, particularly considering that they had only just met. During their time at the bar, the atmosphere became more intimate as the two engaged in flirtatious banter for about an hour. It appeared to be a typical casual date with nothing extraordinary occurring. When the man excused himself to use the restroom, Grace seized the opportunity to send a text message to one of her friends back in England. She enthusiastically shared how well the date was progressing and how they had connected. Filled with excitement, she promised to divulge all the details in the morning. Unfortunately, that subsequent message never arrived, and tragically, her friend never heard from Grace again. The following morning, which happened to be December 2nd, 2018, Grace's 22nd birthday commenced with a flurry of text messages and missed calls from her loved ones, all eager to wish her a happy birthday. As the day progressed from morning to afternoon and then evening, the celebratory greetings for Grace's birthday went unanswered. She did not answer either of her two phones, as both calls were directed straight to voicemail. She failed to respond to any messages or share any pictures of her trip, to update everyone on her well-being. Initially, Grace's parents were not overly concerned due to the significant time difference of 13 hours between the UK and New Zealand. They assumed she might be out celebrating her birthday in an area with no cellular reception. However, as the hours turned into days without any communication from their daughter, the silence became increasingly conspicuous and worrisome. Grace was renowned for regularly updating her loved ones about her travels, ensuring she never missed a day without checking in. Therefore, her sudden disappearance on her birthday came as a shock and raised concerns for her worried parents. The growing silence only intensified their apprehension, leaving them wondering where Grace could be. Sensing that something was amiss, her father wasted no time and promptly purchased a ticket to New Zealand, embarking on a journey to find his daughter. Upon arriving on December 5, 2018, Grace's father immediately took action by filing a missing persons report with the local authorities. The New Zealand police swiftly responded to the situation, actively involving themselves in the case as soon as they were informed of Grace's disappearance. They promptly reached out to the hostel where Grace had been staying, and it was confirmed that she had not returned on the night of December 1st, 2018. Initially, the police did not suspect foul play since most of Grace's belongings remained in her hostel room. However, due to the urgency and mounting pressure, they promptly organized a press conference appealing for assistance in locating 22-year-old Grace Millane, who had last been seen at 7:15 p.m. on December 1st. Recognizing the significance of social media and public reporting, over 20 staff members were assigned to the case. They understood the importance of gathering information and utilizing the community's support to aid in locating Grace and resolving the mystery surrounding her disappearance. Fortunately for the detectives, it did not take long to identify the last person seen with Grace before she vanished. Their initial step involved delving into her social media accounts to unravel the digital trail and piece together the events leading up to her disappearance. This digital detective work proved to be a crucial aspect of the investigation. On the night Grace disappeared, she made a change to her Facebook profile picture. Shortly after, a comment was posted under the picture, complimenting her beauty. This caught the attention of the police, who identified the person behind the common as Jess Kempson. Jesse was staying at the City Life Hotel in Auckland at the time. However, what raised even more concern was a previous post written by Jesse. In parts of the post, he expressed remorse for his mistakes, arrogance, and selfishness. But before delving into that, let's gather more information about Jesse. Jess Kempson, who was 26 years old at the time, was born in Wellington and had a nomadic childhood due to his parents' separation. While his grandparents played a role in raising him, he grew distant from many other family members. People who knew Jesse described him as a compulsive liar, constantly fabricating stories about different aspects of his life. He would make up tales such as being the cousin of a famous All Blacks rugby player or falsely claiming to be terminally ill with cancer. His habit of lying extended to everyone, including employers, landlords, partners, and even his own family and friends. Jess's constant lying led to him being evicted from multiple residences and losing jobs repeatedly. For instance, he once convinced a former landlord that he was a professional softball player signed by New Zealand's national team, the Black Sox, and was awaiting contract money. However, after 8 weeks of excuses, the landlord grew suspicious and contacted the Black Sox management, exposing Jesse's lies once again. His last job in telephone sales also ended in dismissal due to his deceitful behavior. Coincidentally, it was on December 1st, 2018, the same day he met Grace Millane, that he lost his job. Recognizing Jesse as the last person seen with Grace, the police realized he held crucial information for their investigation. Consequently, on December 5th, 2018, the day Grace was reported missing, the police visited the City Life Hotel to speak with Jesse. As they approached the front desk, Jess returned to the hotel as well. Interestingly, upon spotting the police, he swiftly turned around and began walking in the opposite direction, keeping his head firmly facing away from them. However, the police quickly noticed Jesse's attempt to evade them, pursued him, and brought him in for questioning. Despite Jesse's efforts to appear innocent and deny any involvement in Grace's disappearance, the police persisted with their investigation, even in the face of his occasional concern. During the interview, the police had a dedicated investigation team diligently working, with one crucial phase involving the examination of CCTV footage. Auckland City boasts numerous CCTV cameras, which provided an extensive amount of footage from the night Grace went missing. Analyzing this footage was time-consuming due to its minute-by-minute coverage of every area. Nonetheless, it proved invaluable in understanding the interactions and movements of both Grace and Jesse, as well as the progression of the evening. While being interviewed, Jesse brought up the concept of catfishing, expressing apprehension about meeting someone who may not have been Grace. He claimed to have chosen to meet her at Sky City amidst a bustling crowd to ensure his own safety. This appeared to be an attempt to establish his innocence, suggesting that if the person he met wasn't Grace, he too could have been at risk of disappearing. The police found Jesse's reactions and behavior during the interview somewhat peculiar, particularly considering that the woman he was with had actually vanished that night. At one point, Grace faced a decision. She could either head back to her accommodation at the base backpackers by going to the right, or she could proceed towards the City Life Hotel where Jesse was staying. As the investigators intensified their pressure on Jesse, he began to display signs of unease and slight panic. Nevertheless, he continued to assert that he had nothing to hide, despite the escalating intensity of the questioning. According to him, nothing out of the ordinary had occurred that night. According to his account, the date concluded positively with a warm embrace and plans for the next day. They bid farewell around 10 p.m. and he mentioned that he attempted to message her on Tinder the following day, only to discover that Grace had unmatched him. This marked the abrupt end of their interactions, as Jesse described it. However, the officers were still in the process of reviewing CCTV footage from the City Life Hotel, and more answers to lingering questions were on the verge of emerging. Despite Jesse's claim that they parted ways on the streets, the footage revealed a different story. Both Jesse and Grace were captured arriving at the City Life Hotel arm in arm, appearing content. They even exited the elevator together on Jesse's floor. Surprisingly, there was no footage of Grace leaving the building, which raised concerning questions about what transpired after they entered the hotel. On the morning of Grace's birthday, cameras recorded Jesse leaving the hotel, but there was no sign of Grace. The cameras closely monitored his movements in the subsequent hours. Jesse left the hotel and engaged in a peculiar sequence of activities. His first stop was a nearby store to purchase a suitcase, followed by a detour to acquire cleaning supplies. Before noon, he hailed a taxi and headed to a car rental company, where he opted to rent a flashy red Toyota Corolla. After several hours, Jesse met another woman he had connected with on Tinder. She later recounted disturbing conversations that took place during their encounter. In a shocking turn of events, he discussed burying bodies, methods to eliminate the smell of blood, and claimed to have acquaintances who were police officers. His date felt extremely uneasy, to the point where she declined Jesse's offer to ride in his car. Instead, she chose to find her own way home and vowed never to communicate with him again. Following the unsettling date, Jess ventured back into the city center, but this time he had an unusual task at hand, renting a rug Dr. Carpet cleaning machine. During the staff's inquiry into his request, Jess calmly provided an explanation for needing it. He had some red wine stains that required immediate attention. Despite the unusual nature of his request, maintained a composed and ordinary demeanor throughout the interaction. Later that evening, at approximately 9:30, Jesse was observed loading 2 suitcases onto a hotel trolley. He proceeded to unload them into the Toyota he had previously rented. After placing the bags in the car's trunk, he returned to his room for the night. The following morning, around 7:00 a.m., Jess once again appeared on camera. This time, he visited a nearby store and purchased a shovel. Subsequently, he entered the rented car and embarked on a drive. Approximately 2 hours later, he was spotted at a local car wash meticulously cleaning the vehicle. It was evident that he took great care in this task before returning to his apartment. These actions, particularly the purchase of a shovel, raised additional concerns and contributed to the enigmatic sequence of events surrounding Jesse. Finally, on December 5, 2018, the day Jesse was questioned, he was observed visiting various locations, including Albert Park, where he disposed of items in bins that were wrapped in black bags. Despite Jesse's denial of any involvement during the questioning, the police began to harbor serious suspicions about him. The forensic search of Jesse's room revealed even more disturbing details. Despite his efforts to eliminate any traces, Grace's blood was discovered throughout the floor. The application of luminol revealed the extent of the cleanup attempt as the entire room emitted a glowing reaction. Furthermore, it became evident that Jesse had walked through the wet blood multiple times. As time progressed, fear among the public grew, and the police expressed grave concerns for Grace's well-being. On December 8, 2018, with an increasing amount of evidence coming to light, was finally apprehended for further questioning. This time, when confronted with all the discoveries made by the officers, his narrative underwent a drastic transformation. During the subsequent interview, Jesse asserted that upon waking up the following morning and realizing Grace's lifeless state, he was overcome with shock. However, this raised numerous inquiries regarding how one could fail to perceive the well-being of their partner after an intimate encounter to the extent that she could perish. Despite this, persistently denied any culpability in Grace's demise. The contradictions between Jess' initial and subsequent interviews were stark. According to the interviewer, he exhibited traits of a narcissistic sociopath who derived pleasure from his actions. In Jess' account, he claimed to have been so terrified that he possessed the presence of mind to strategize and decide to conceal Grace's body in a suitcase and bury it in an undisclosed location to eradicate any evidence. However, he seemed to have overlooked the fact that his movements were captured by CCTV cameras, which exposed the inconsistencies in his narratives. Consequently, Jesse was formally charged and detained by the police. While incarcerated, the investigation persisted and unveiled more unsettling details. It was discovered that between December 1st and December 7th, Jess conducted a series of disturbing Google searches. These searches, which took place on the night of December 1st at approximately 1:30 a.m., while Grace lay lifeless in his room, included topics such as hottest fire, flesh-eating birds, and the Waitokere Ranges, the very location where he buried Grace's body. Furthermore, following these searches, he visited an adult website and took several intimate photographs of Grace's deceased body. These actions, far from indicative of shock, suggested a deliberate awareness of his actions. Meanwhile, based on the information provided by Jesse during the interview, the police promptly initiated a search on December 9, 2018, in an area along Scenic Drive near the Waitokere Reservoir. Shortly after 4 p.m., law enforcement officers discovered a body approximately 10 yards from the road. The swift response by the authorities tragically confirmed that the body belonged to none other than Grace, bringing a somber conclusion to the investigation. Grace's parents had held on to hope that their daughter might be in a safe place and would eventually return home. But this devastating news completely shattered their world. The moment was filled with intense emotions for everyone involved in the search, and the grief spread across the nation. Thousands of people came together to pay tribute to Grace by participating in vigils, reflecting the collective mourning of the entire community. New Zealand's Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, publicly apologized to Grace's parents and offered her full support during this heart-wrenching time. Jess Kempson, the accused murderer of Grace Millane, faced charges and appeared in an Auckland court on December 10, 2018, just 9 days after Grace's tragic death. In order to ensure a fair trial, Kempson was granted interim name suppression. This legal measure aimed to prevent the release of certain details to the public during the early stages of the trial. In order to avoid prejudicing the proceedings, following an autopsy, a pathologist confirmed that Grace had been strangled. The examination revealed bruises on her arms and chest, indicating that she had been forcefully pinned down. The pathologist explained that causing these injuries required significant force, and the pressure on her neck must have endured for a prolonged period of 4 to 5 minutes, ultimately leading to Grace's tragic death. Over a month after her passing, on January 10, 2019, a large gathering of individuals assembled at Brentwood Cathedral in Essex to pay their respects at her funeral. Detective Scott Beard, who had been involved in the case, traveled to England to offer support and condolences to the Millane family. The significant turnout reflected the widespread sympathy and shared sorrow experienced by the entire community during this solemn occasion. On January 16, 2019, a mere 6 days after Grace was laid to rest, Jesse appeared in the High Court and pleaded not guilty. The trial commenced on November 4, 2019, lasting for a duration of 3 weeks. Throughout most of the proceedings, Jesse maintained a stoic expression, displaying no visible emotions. Under the guidance of Ian Brookie, Jesse's defense team argued that Grace's demise was the unfortunate result of consensual rough intimacy gone awry. They contended that Grace had engaged in similar physical encounters prior to meeting Jesse, and this particular instance was a tragic case of physical misfortune. The defense aimed to frame the events leading to Grace's death within the context of consensual actions that took an unintended and unfortunate turn, rather than a deliberate act. They asserted that Jesse, in a state of panic, attempted to conceal Grace's body after realizing that the encounter had accidentally led to her demise. The defense portrayed his subsequent efforts to hide Grace's body as impulsive reactions to a situation that had spiraled out of control. However, the prosecution, led by Crown Solicitor Brian Dickey, sought to depict Grace's murder as intentional. Dickey presented a substantial amount of compelling evidence and witnesses to counter the defense's claim that Jess panicked, emphasizing that this was not a mere mistake. According to Dickey, the evidence pointed towards a deliberate and intentional act. Jesse systematically and coldly attempted to cover his tracks by consistently lying and fabricating numerous stories in the process. On November 22, 2019, a jury consisting of 7 women and 5 men reached a guilty verdict after just 5 hours of deliberation, dismissing Jess Kempson's claims of innocence. He was convicted for the murder of Grace Millane and subsequently sentenced to life imprisonment on February 21, 2020, with a minimum non-parole period of 17 years. This meant that he would be eligible for parole only after serving a minimum of 17 years behind bars. The trial sparked widespread outrage as many criticized the way Grace's life was portrayed, and her killer's attempts to rationalize her death. Instead of holding the killer accountable, it was seen as victim blaming, which was deeply shameful. However, the story did not end there, as Jesse faced 2 more trials the following year. In October 2020, 2 women came forward with horrifying stories after recognizing Jesse's blurred image following his arrest for Grace's murder. The first trial involved Jesse's former partner, who spoke about enduring physical, emotional, and financial abuse. Jesse had subjected her to threats with knives, choking, coercion, and drained her bank account of $10,000. He was found guilty of 8 charges and received a sentence of 7.5 years in prison. In November 2020, Jesse faced another trial for physically abusing a young tourist he had met on Tinder just 8 months prior to meeting Grace. He had attempted to force himself on her and threaten harm to her and her family if she did not comply. He was found guilty and received an additional 3.5 years in prison, bringing the total sentence to 11 years, which would run concurrently with the sentence for Grace's murder. Tragically, in November 2020, Grace's father, David Millane, passed away after battling cancer. Grace's parents never had the chance to see their daughter again. Grace was a vibrant and adventurous young woman, always eager to explore new things. Unfortunately, she embarked on a journey from which she never returned, leaving behind a void in the lives of those who dearly miss her presence. On the morning of August 3, 2007, the day started off bright and sunny for Daniel Burrows, a 61-year-old resident of Mays Landing, New Jersey, along with his 45-year-old wife, Loretta, and other community members. Daniel and Loretta had been married for several years, but things took an unexpected turn that afternoon. Loretta spotted Daniel in the company of a blonde girl, driving a yellow Hummer with 4 of the license plates. Naturally, she was taken aback and confronted Daniel about the situation. To her shock, Daniel confessed that he was leaving her for the younger lady. Unfortunately, that was the last time anyone saw Daniel. Many questions soon arise. What happened to Daniel? Did he simply elope with the younger woman? Or is there a more troubling reason behind his sudden change in behavior and subsequent disappearance? Mays Landing, located within Hamilton Township in Atlantic County, New Jersey, is an unincorporated community and census-designated place. According to the 2010 U.S. Census, the population of Mays Landing was recorded at 2,135 individuals. Notably, it serves as the county seat of Atlantic County, which is situated along the Jersey Shore. As of the 2020 census, Atlantic County ranks as the state's 15th most populous county. Mays Landing is renowned for the popular Balig Winery, one of the largest wine producers in the state. The residents of this community are known for their easygoing and cheerful nature. In 2007, the crime rate in Mays Landing stood at 329 incidents per 100,000 people, significantly lower than the national average of 472. This is the very community where Daniel Burrows and his wife resided. Daniel Burrows, born on November 6, 1946 in Sheldon, Texas, was raised in the heart of Delaware County, Pennsylvania, alongside his sister, Jean Burrows Gallagher. Due to certain circumstances, they later moved to New Jersey where his mother, Louise Floria Wuntersick, remarried Raymond J. Wuntersick. Daniel's half-brother, Raymond J. Wuntersick III, quickly became his closest companion. From a young age, Daniel displayed an extraordinary talent for craftsmanship, with his hands possessing a magical touch. His skills ranged from custom automotive paintwork to home construction. Although he did not have a conventional job, his knack for car repairs and renovations kept him occupied and satisfied. In 1960, Daniel attended high school where he crossed paths with Loretta Doyle, his high school sweetheart. They experienced the highs and lows of teenage love, but their relationship was not particularly serious during that time. Unexpectedly, they went their separate ways after graduation and lost contact for many years. Both Daniel and Loretta moved on and married different individuals. However, they both went through divorces in 1970. Unfortunately, Loretta's second husband passed away in February 1994. Shortly after reconnecting, Loretta and Daniel's bond reunited, and they began dating once again. After 3 years of dating, the high school sweethearts decided to get married in 1997. They settled in Mays Landing, New Jersey, and everything seemed blissful. They blended their families with children from their previous marriages, and Loretta even had 4 grandchildren. Daniel was a devoted father to his 2 children, Carolyn and Danny Jr., and a loving grandfather to Amanda Costa. However, their marriage was not as uncomplicated as it appeared. Over time, challenges arose beneath the surface of their seemingly smooth relationship. On August 3, 2007, Daniel mysteriously vanished from their home. Loretta recounted that Daniel had departed with a younger blonde woman in a yellow Hummer. As per her account, the woman was a waitress from Florida whom they had encountered during their vacation at a restaurant. Daniel developed a strong liking for the place, resulting in them dining there almost every day of their vacation. Upon their return home, Loretta embarked on another vacation with her daughter's family. Upon her return, she was taken aback to find Daniel in their driveway with the woman from Florida. While she was still trying to comprehend the situation, Daniel announced his intention to go to Florida, the Sunshine State, with her. Loretta insisted that Daniel had always desired to relocate and retire in Florida, a plan she opposed due to the proximity of her grandchildren. Their conflicting views on retirement plans strained their relationship. Following Daniel's sudden move, Loretta was devastated and sought revenge. She contemplated selling their house, but since the property was jointly owned by Daniel and Loretta, she could not do so without divorcing him. Instead, she organized a yard sale to dispose of Daniel's belongings. Unsurprisingly, this action infuriated and aroused suspicion among Daniel's friends and family. Robert Valiant, Jr., Daniel's close friend, was perplexed as he knew Daniel cherished his tools for his projects, making it unusual for him to abandon them. Robert confronted Loretta about the yard sale and the abandoned tools, but Loretta asserted that Daniel had no interest in keeping his old belongings and did not wish to take them to Florida. Even Daniel's brother and best friend Raymond found the situation suspicious. Daniel had not shared his new address or informed him of his move to Florida, which they would typically discuss regularly. Daniel's sudden and unexpected departure left those close to him bewildered and concerned. They felt that the narrative did not align, yet they lacked evidence to contradict Loretta's account. However, they were determined to uncover the truth about Daniel's whereabouts and the identity of the mysterious girl who caused him to vanish without a trace. On September 1, 2007, Raymond made the journey from his Pennsylvania home to visit Loretta and officially reported Daniel as missing to the police. The authorities immediately launched an investigation focusing their search on local databases, particularly in Florida, where Daniel was rumored to have gone. Unfortunately, their efforts yielded no leads or traces of Daniel's whereabouts. Throughout the investigation, the detectives conducted interviews with Loretta, who remained cooperative and forthcoming. They also thoroughly searched her house and property, but found nothing suspicious or out of place. As they delved deeper into Loretta's background, the detectives stumbled upon a past embezzlement case. It came to light that Loretta had embezzled a substantial sum of money, approximately $500,000, from her previous workplace nearly a decade ago. This resulted in a 15-month federal prison sentence prior to her marriage to Daniel in 1997. When confronted with the evidence, Loretta claimed that she had been unfairly targeted by her company, and that others were involved in the embezzlement as well. She admitted that she had kept this secret from Daniel out of fear. Surprisingly, it was revealed that Daniel had visited Loretta regularly during her time in prison, but she had not been entirely honest with him about the reason for her incarceration. Ronald Roberts, Daniel's friend and neighbor, also provided some concerning information to the investigators. He noticed dirt on Loretta's hands and clothing during their interactions and detected a foul odor, which she attributed to a dead animal. Additionally, he observed that a broken trellis had recently been repaired. Despite these suspicions, Loretta always had an explanation ready, frustratingly leaving the police without concrete evidence to make an arrest. As time passed, Daniel's case gradually grew colder, leaving his loved ones desperate for answers. In February 2009, Loretta took a significant step in her life by initiating divorce proceedings against Daniel. After enough time had passed, she believed it was justified to end their marriage and sell their house. To formalize the process, a notice was published in the newspaper. However, when the court hearing arrived, Daniel was nowhere to be found. Loretta's plan was to sell their house in Mays Landing and move to Ventmouth City to be closer to her daughter and sister. In February 2010, Daniel Burrows' family successfully convinced investigators to reopen the case after the local police established a cold case unit in the county. The family also created a Facebook page called Find Daniel Burrows to gather information. In the page's About section, Raymond, Daniel's brother, expressed suspicion towards Loretta's claim Daniel had left with another woman, leaving all his belongings behind. This raised doubts about Loretta's account of events. The case took an unexpected turn in February 2013 when Raymond, frustrated with the lack of progress, contacted the police. He believed that Loretta might be responsible for Daniel's disappearance and hinted that he might be deceased. Loretta was shocked by the accusations of her involvement in her husband's possible death. She maintained that Daniel had simply run away with a younger woman, but without concrete evidence to support either claim, the police were at a standstill. However, Raymond was determined to uncover the truth. He urged the detectives to investigate the suspicious death of Loretta's first husband. There were suspicions among both family members and friends that Loretta had played a role in his demise. The circumstances leading to his death were troubling. After a period of separation, Loretta and her former husband rekindled their relationship for about a week before tragedy struck, and he tragically overdosed. What deepened the suspicions even further was the fact that Loretta had been responsible for administering his medications during this period. Adding to the concerns, the police discovered that Loretta had received a substantial amount of money following his death. However, to everyone's surprise, she did not share any portion of it with his children. This raised red flags and strengthened the belief that something was amiss regarding the circumstances surrounding his death. Authorities began to suspect that Loretta's involvement went beyond what initially appeared. The similarities to Daniel's case only heightened their suspicions. However, despite their growing doubts, the police knew that without Daniel's body, they couldn't build a murder case. Nevertheless, they did stumble upon a potentially significant piece of evidence, a power of attorney document signed by Daniel. Upon closer examination, this document seems suspiciously fake. It had been created on June 12, 2007, and had been legalized by an acquaintance of Loretta's, raising even more questions about the events surrounding Daniel's disappearance. It became evident that Loretta's primary motive was the valuable house, which was worth a substantial amount of money, and she was desperate to cash out. Investigators realized that there was more to this case than initially met the eye, and they were determined to uncover the truth about what had truly happened to Daniel. In the early morning of May 17, 2013, the investigators, led by Sergeant Lynn Doherty of the Atlantic County Prosecutor's Office, obtained search warrants for both Loretta's house and the residence where she had been staying with her sister. The search warrants were executed simultaneously, leaving Loretta with no opportunity to tamper with or destroy any potential evidence. Loretta seemed to have an inkling as to why the police were there, as she anxiously inquired if they were planning to search her house in Ventmore City upon their arrival. Detective Caroline McDonald's stumbled upon an eerie finding while scouring one of the bedrooms in Ventmore City. To her surprise, she discovered a collection of sizable Tupperware containers meticulously arranged and hidden within the closet. Curiously, these containers were the sole items in the house organized in such a manner. Adding to the peculiarity, air freshener beads and dryer sheets were placed atop these containers. However, the moment the containers were opened, a nauseating odor of decay permeated the air, sending shivers down their spines. To their utmost horror, investigators uncovered bones that had been painstakingly separated into two containers, along with a concealed skull nestled within a woman's handbag. Loretta was subsequently apprehended and brought in for interrogation at the police station. In a state of distress, she tearfully admitted to the murder of Daniel and disclosed that his remains were concealed within the closet of her Ventnor residence. However, Loretta presented a narrative of domestic violence, asserting that she had acted in self-defense. According to her account, a heated argument ensued between them, prompting her to retreat to the kitchen and retrieve a knife. Loretta alleged that Daniel aggressively lunged at her, resulting in an accidental impalement with the knife. After the incident, she confessed to placing Daniel's lifeless body in the bathtub. When questioned by detectives about her failure to immediately contact emergency services, Loretta provided a disturbing explanation. She revealed that she had left Daniel's body in the bathtub and proceeded to embark on a vacation. Upon her return, she detailed how she relocated his remains into containers. Notably, Loretta admitted to exhuming and carrying these containers with her whenever she moved. The tragic truth surrounding Daniel Burrows was finally unveiled. Loretta faced charges of murder and obstructing her arrest. During the court proceedings, Loretta initially displayed minimal emotion, but as the testimonies unfolded, she broke down and began weeping. The testimonies commenced with Dr. Charles F. Sebert Jr., a forensic pathologist who had opened the containers. Dr. Charles testified that the containers were enveloped in 9 layers of plastic bags meticulously arranged in alternating directions. He also observed the presence of dryer sheets, air fresheners, and scented beads evidently used to mask the scent of decomposition. Upon opening the first container, Dr. Charles discovered a woman's handbag, its color altered by the fluids of decomposition. Inside the bag, he uncovered a cranium, mandible, skull, and jawbone. The second, larger plastic container contained additional skeletal remains, including the left upper arm and lower legs. Upon examining the remains, Dr. Charles observed incisions on the ribs that were consistent with stat wounds. This led him to conclude that the individual had met a violent end, confirming a case of homicide. Following Dr. Charles's testimony, Dr. Stuart Alexander, a forensic odontologist, took the stand and positively identified the remains in the plastic tote as belonging to Daniel Burrows. He compared Burrows' dental records to the teeth found in the skull, providing further evidence of identification. Donna Fontana, a forensic anthropologist from the New Jersey State Police, also provided testimony regarding the condition of the bones within the boxes. To visually demonstrate the state of the bones, Fontana utilized a replica of a human skeleton and accompanying photographs, offering a clear visual aid for the jury. She specifically highlighted the right tibia, a significant bone in the lower leg, which exhibited distinct signs of being cut with a knife and saw. The consistent color of the cut edge with the bone indicated that the cut had occurred around the time of death. Additionally, Fontana observed that several ribs were missing, and those that displayed trauma showed injuries consistent with knife wounds, with one rib being completely fractured. Fontana emphasized that this pattern of dismemberment is often employed to hinder identification and facilitate transportation. On August 3, 2007, Daniel disappeared, with Loretta claiming he had left for a younger woman in a yellow Hummer. However, the prosecution believed that Loretta had orchestrated his murder. In early June 2007, Loretta approached Warware in Itteberg and requested a power of attorney to be drafted, claiming that she and her husband were selling their home while he was away. Grateful for Loretta's kindness, Heiberg agreed to do it for free. Loretta then sought the assistance of Edward Dwyer to notarize the power of attorney, which she signed in her husband's name without his consent. Loretta's daughter, Nicole de Dimigio, witnessed this act of forgery. After Daniel's death, Loretta utilized the fraudulent document to sell their home for $77,000, with half of the proceeds belonging to Daniel. To gain access to the funds, she initiated a divorce in February 2009, alleging that Daniel had relocated to Florida without providing an address. Her divorce lawyer, Daniel also from, published a notice of the complaint in the press of Atlantic City. During the divorce proceedings, Loretta received half of the money, with the remaining amount granted upon finalization. The prosecutor highlighted that Loretta acquired nearly $100,000, including the proceeds from the sale of Daniel's house and belongings. In his closing statement, Levis emphasized that Loretta had evaded justice for over 8 years, leaving behind only Daniel's remains. The narrative concludes with Loretta becoming $100,000 wealthier and concealing Daniel Burrows in her closet. Following 2 hours of deliberation, the jury found Loretta Burrows guilty of first-degree murder for fatally stabbing her husband, dismembering his body with a knife and saw, packing it into 2 plastic containers, and dragging it with her as she relocated 3 times within 6 years. On March 17, 2015, Loretta was convicted and sentenced to 55 years in prison, with an additional 3 years added for hindering apprehension. She will be eligible for parole in 2060 when she reaches 108 years old. After receiving her sentence, Loretta broke down in court and expressed her hope that her actions would bring some form of peace to those who had been harmed. Currently, Loretta is incarcerated at the Edna Mahone Correctional Facility for Women in Clinton, New Jersey, where she is expected to remain until her death. Raymond Wontorsic experienced a mix of emotions following the conviction of his half-brother's murderer. Raymond had fought for a trial since Daniel's remains were discovered in May of 2013. He wanted the jurors to witness the gruesome evidence of what Loretta had done to Daniel. Raymond stated, "It was my brother who brought justice to this case. He brought justice to himself. His horribly mutilated body won the case." Raymond compared Loretta's actions to those of a butcher slaughtering an animal, emphasizing that Daniel was not an animal, but a kind and gentle person who never caused harm to anyone. Loretta's emotional display in court, coupled with her insinuations of abuse by Daniel, were met with skepticism and dismissal from Raymond and other family members. They believed her tears were fake and her claims were false, suggesting that she only cried because she knew she would spend the rest of her life in prison after being caught. Robert Valiant Sr., a friend of Daniel's, expressed this sentiment. Carolyn Burroughs, Daniel's sister, was both outraged and bewildered by Loretta's behavior. She revealed that Loretta had attempted to sell Daniel's belongings shortly after his disappearance and had even advised people not to worry about him. Carolyn questioned how Loretta could have kept Daniel hidden in her closet while moving him from house to house. Assistant Atlantic County Prosecutor Kathleen Bond described Loretta's actions as unimaginable, resembling scenes from nightmares and horror movies. Bond highlighted that Loretta not only brutally stabbed her husband to death, but also dismembered his body with a serrated knife, leaving it to decompose for 6 years. At the time of this video's release, there were no updates on the investigation into the death of Loretta's first husband. Daniel Burroughs' story serves as a reminder to persistently advocate for what we believe in. The determination and advocacy displayed by Daniel's family, including the creation of a Facebook page and their push for reinvestigation, ultimately led to the uncovering of the truth. This case exemplifies the power of seeking justice and the importance of persistence. Regarding whether justice was served for Daniel Burroughs and whether Loretta's sentence was appropriate or she should have received the death penalty, that is a matter of personal opinion. Robert Peter Kissel was born on April 21, 1963 in Manhattan and was raised in the New Jersey suburbs. Born to William Kissel, a prominent businessman, he was the middle child among 3 siblings. His elder brother, Andrew Kissel, and younger sister, Jane Kissel Clayton, completed the family. Robert had a close bond with his brother, Andrew, who was 4 years older. They shared a healthy competition for success from a young age. Even as teens, their personalities diverged. Robert was a great sportsman and the all-American boy. He also had an intuitive knack for numbers and an inclination to help people. Andrew, on the other hand, leaned more towards prioritizing personal achievement and would go to any length to be successful. Robert pursued his education at the University of Rochester's College of Engineering and later at New York University. He graduated in 1986. After attending the University of Rochester, Robert put his bachelor's degree in optical engineering to use by entering the toner business owned by his father. In 1987, he took a trip to a Club Med resort in the Caribbean's Turks and Caicos Islands, a journey that would change his life. There he encountered a slender 22-year-old waitress named Nancy Keeshan. Robert, captivated by Nancy, described her as vivacious and attractive. The connection between them grew stronger, and about 2 years later, the couple decided to move in together. They eventually tied the knot in 1989. On May 1, 1964, Nancy entered this world as the daughter of Gene and Ira Keeshan. Originally from Michigan, she relocated to Oakland, California with her mother following her parents' divorce. She pursued art studies at Parsons School of Design in Manhattan's Greenwich Village while working in various restaurants, including E.J.'s Luncheonette. The union of Robert and Nancy laid the groundwork for the events that unfolded in the following years. In 1990, the year after their wedding, Robert pursued further education at New York University's Leonard and Stern School of Business. In 1991, he successfully graduated with a master's degree in business administration. During his time at NYU, Robert studied under Edward Altman, a finance professor renowned for inventing the Z-score, a mathematical formula to assess a company's risk of bankruptcy. Impressed by Robert's capabilities, Altman appointed him as a teaching assistant. He reflected on Robert's time as a student and stated that Robert was a very bright, ambitious, and pleasant student who really blossomed after his graduation. He also claimed that Robert was very focused and intense in his work. During this period, Nancy Kissel had stopped attending art school to support Robert while he pursued his studies at NYU. In 1991, Robert began his career at Leidenberg Thalmann and Company, a Wall Street investment firm where he specialized in distressed debt. A year later, he moved to Lazard Frears and Company and became a vice president in the high-yield group. By 1997, Robert joined Goldman Sachs and was sent to Hong Kong as a managing director in its Asian Special Situations Group. In Asia, Robert faced the aftermath of an economic crisis, with opportunities arising from distressed debt. Foreign investors had dumped shares, which created cutthroat conditions in businesses. In June 2000, Robert moved to Merrill Lynch, the largest U.S. securities firm by brokers, to lead its Asian distressed debt business. Over the next 2 years, Merrill purchased at least $500 million of bad debts in Korea and around another $200 million in Taiwan. Robert had brought along his friend and colleague, David No from Goldman. In the wake of the crisis, Robert gained immense respect as a top-tier investor in Asia. Joseph Draper, a Hong Kong-based managing director at Citigroup Incorporated, the world's largest financial services company, collaborated with Kissel to purchase bad debts in Taiwan. The duo had prepared rival bids for the $1.8 billion of distressed debt from the Bank of China at the time when Robert's life was tragically cut short. Through all the downfalls and successes, Robert and Nancy remained close to his brother Andrew and his wife, Haley Wolf. They ventured into business together, with Robert investing $500,000 in one of Andrew's real estate companies. They occasionally vacationed together at multi-million-dollar homes in Stratton, Vermont. This was a resort in the Green Mountains about 4 hours north of New York where they had skied as children. It was a blessed model family, and they had everything they could ever want. By 2000, Nancy Kissel had 2 small children, Elaine in June and an infant named Reese. The move to Hong Kong brought additional pressure for both her and the family. Adjusting to the foreign environment and being frequently alone due to Robert's extensive travels made it challenging. Robert's demanding work schedule left him with little time for his children. Despite these challenges, Nancy excelled as a mother. They took time to settle into the new environment, but eventually began to find spaces to pursue their hobbies. In a city without skiing, Robert still found time for sports, participating in Trail Walker, a grueling 60-mile mountain trek taking 12 to 48 hours to finish. Nancy dedicated herself to volunteer work, contributing at the Hong Kong International School, a $15,000 a year private school attended by their 2 oldest children, and at the United Jewish Congregation. She also organized an annual Halloween party for all the residents of their 20-story tower at Parkview, the largest private housing estate in Tai Tam, Hong Kong. In 2003, at the age of 40, Robert became an expatriate banker, leading a lavish life in a $20,000 a month, 3,270 square foot apartment with a breathtaking view of Hong Kong skyline and the South China Sea. His sleek silver Porsche Carrera to live in Filipina maids and a $20 million fortune spoke of his prosperity. And this was the same year he was found lying dead wrapped in a carpet. The incident began when Robert missed a conference call on November 3, 2003, according to David No, his colleague and friend. Concern grew as he didn't show up for an important meeting the next day, where they were supposed to prepare a bid for Bank of China's distressed debt. As the week went on, colleagues and friends became more worried about Robert. By Wednesday, November 4th, David decided to inform the authorities about his disappearance. After this call, Hong Kong authorities went to the Kissel residence, where they met Nancy and their 3 children. but Robert was nowhere to be seen. Consider it a simple gut feeling, but officers felt a bit uneasy about the situation. Despite the place looking clean, they didn't like how Nancy behaved or talked about Robert. She made it clear to officers that she filed a missing persons report that very same morning, claiming he had left after assaulting her. However, officers didn't believe her story. From an intuitive perspective, Robert's disappearance didn't make sense, so they chose to investigate further around the property. Around midnight on November 6, 2003, investigators finally discovered what they were searching for. A serviceman at the complex had tipped them off about Nancy seeking help to move an old rug into the apartment garage. This rug proved to be exceptionally heavy, requiring for service members to handle it. And those who assisted noted a suspicious fishy smell. When they entered the storage room, investigators swiftly located the item of interest. Behind the door, there was a rolled-up oriental rug tied tightly with rope and secured with layers of tape. On top of the rug was a pillow and a bag filled with bedsheets, and they all appeared oddly bulky. As they unrolled the rug, suspicion transformed into sheer horror. Inside, with a plastic bag secured around his head, lay the lifeless body of Robert Kissel. His entire form was wrapped within a large white plastic bag and bound with layers of tape. Investigators immediately recognized that he had been deceased for a considerable period, as the unmistakable odor of decay permeated the scene. At 2:41 a.m. on November 7, 2003, a mere 2 hours after the discovery of Robert Kissel's body, police officers arrested Nancy Kissel. She faced charges for the murder of her own husband. When police examined Robert Kissel's body, they found out he was hit 5 times with a blunt object. An autopsy showed he had 5 prescription medications in his stomach, which included a strong sedative called Rohypnol. During Nancy's interrogation, she asserted that Robert came at her with a baseball bat, and in self-defense, she swung back. According to her, she then blacked out and had no memory of how he died and ultimately ended up wrapped in a carpet. She also said that for years, Robert had subjected her to both mental and physical abuse. Nancy also claimed that her husband had a history of cocaine abuse and heavy drinking. She portrayed a narrative of having endured years of mistreatment. Additionally, Nancy asserted that Robert Kissel had actively searched the internet for both male and female partners in Taiwan and Paris. Their life had seemed perfect, and to the world, they appeared happy. However, there was more lurking beneath the surface. As detectives looked deeper into the couple's history, a lot of information came to light. Robert and Nancy's story was like a roller coaster, and their love life had its ups and downs, much like their marriage. For many years, Rob and his wife seemed like a fantastic and fun couple. Moving to Hong Kong wasn't Nancy's preferred choice, especially since Rob worked long hours and traveled a lot. But he made a fortune and they enjoyed a luxurious lifestyle. Nancy came from a more modest background and loved the money. She shared a similarity with Andrew in that aspect. One of her best friends mentioned the more money she's got, the more she wanted to spend it. Even though Nancy sometimes boasted about her intimate life with Rob, things took a turn during a spring 2003 visit to their Vermont house. Nancy, along with the kids and one of their maids, went there to escape the Asian SARS threat, a viral respiratory illness that emerged in Asia in the early 2000s. During this time, Nancy needed someone to fix the house's sound system, and she reached out to Lance Del Piore, 41, recommended by Robert's brother. Lance sent his brother, Michael Del Piore, 42, to handle the repairs. This is when Nancy met the good-looking Vermonter. He showed up to repair her TV, and soon, he began bragging about the expensive jewelry Nancy had given him to the people around town. He even talked about the tattoo she got, which was something Robert, her husband, hadn't approved of. Nancy had started an affair with him, the man who lived in a trailer park near Stratton. She also claimed that Michael wasn't interested in her wealth and understood her struggles to be accepted for who she was as a person. He didn't judge her by where she lived, what she drove, or the kind of jewelry she wore. According to Lance Del Piore, who fired his brother over the affair, Nancy started to spend a lot of money on him. Even though he knew about the affair, Lance agreed not to tell Robert Randrew about it. Robert Kissel became suspicious of his wife. So on June 6, 2003, he hired Alpha Group Investigations, a private investigation firm in Farmingdale, New York, led by Frank Shea. The firm was paid a total of $25,000. Frank Shea, a former New York Police Department detective, sent investigator Rocco Gatta to Stratton to keep an eye on Nancy. Gatta spotted Michael Del Piore when he drove up to the house and immediately called Shea, who was on the phone with Robert. Robert then called Nancy and confronted her about the situation. Del Piore left the house shortly after, as reported by Gatta. On other occasions, Del Piore stayed at the house until late at night. Robert had also installed spyware on his wife's computer. When she returned from the US, he found out that she had conducted internet searches using very suspicious phrases like overdose of sleeping pills and medications causing heart attack. In August 2003, during a visit to New York, Robert confided in Shea, telling him he suspected he was being drugged as he often felt woozy and disoriented. When Shea traveled to Hong Kong for other business, he met Robert for drinks at the China Club on September 6, 2003. Shea recalled telling Robert that Nancy was trying to get rid of him. After Robert heard this, he struggled to believe that his wife of 14 years would do such a thing. In late September, Robert discovered bills for a mobile phone that Nancy had acquired secretly, listing her address as the Hong Kong International School, according to David No. This discovery was the breaking point for Robert, and he confided in David about his marital problems. Despite their troubles, the couple still appeared in public together. On October 8, 2003, Nancy and Robert attended a banquet hosted by the International Bank of Asia in Hong Kong, where former U.S. President George H.W. Bush was the guest of honor. Due to having a terrible argument, according to Nancy, they arrived late for cocktails with Bush. During dinner, she approached Bush's table, tapped him on the shoulder, and asked if she could introduce him to her husband. The ex-president then even posed for photographs with them. In the last week of October, a few weeks after their public appearance, Robert informed David No that he planned to seek a divorce and intended to tell Nancy that Sunday night on November 2, 2003. Robert even told David about his readiness to fly Michael Del Piore to Hong Kong so that Nancy would stay there while he stayed close to their children. During that week, Nancy made appointments with 2 doctors and obtained prescriptions for hypnotic and sedative drugs, as later detailed by prosecutor Peter Chapman. On the Sunday in question, November 2nd, Robert Kissel and an acquaintance, Andrew Tanzer, returned to the Kissel apartment after their children played together at the Jewish Center. Nancy prepared 2 strawberry milkshakes and asked the children to give them to their fathers. When Tanzer inquired about the contents, she referred to it as a secret recipe. Tanzer returned to his apartment where he fell asleep and later exhibited strange behavior, like consuming 3 tubs of ice cream, as testified by his wife, Kazuko Ochi. At 5 p.m. that day, David called Kissel and found him vague and unclear, tired and sleepy. Later that same night, police alleged that Nancy bludgeoned her husband to death using an 8.3-pound lead statue, a Kishin family heirloom topped with 2 female figurines. While looking at the sequence of events, it became very apparent to investigators that Nancy was responsible. According to them, Nancy had kept the body in their house for at least 2 nights before she called workers to move the carpet she had wrapped him in. The trial commenced in June 2005 at the High Court of Hong Kong, where the prosecution accused Nancy of murdering her husband, to which she pleaded not guilty. During her testimony, Nancy described how Robert, after their visit to the synagogue, revealed his intention to divorce her and retain custody of their children. She claimed that Robert, in response to her pressing for answers, slapped her across the face. This angered Nancy and led to a confrontation where she pointed her finger in Robert's face, a gesture he very much despised. She recounted how Robert, in a fit of rage, dragged her to the bedroom, threw her on the bed, and engaged in forceful, inappropriate acts with her. Nancy managed to break free during the struggle, and as she crawled away, Robert grabbed her leg and tried to pull her back. She panicked and grabbed a figurine and swung it around in defense. After this, Nancy believed the confrontation was over. However, Robert recovered, grabbed a metal bat, and began swinging it at her head while she used the figurine as a shoe. According to Nancy's account, Everything went blank at this point. She claimed no recollection of hitting Robert 4 more times with the heavy object, buying the rug, rolling him into it, or even calling maintenance to move it to storage. Although homicide detectives were aware Nancy had cleaned up the crime scene, she testified that she didn't remember any of it and only realized her husband was dead when informed by investigators. During the trial, a great deal of information regarding the aftermath of the murder was revealed. On the day when Robert met his tragic end, Nancy instructed her maids to purchase packing tape and rope. At the same time, she went carpet shopping and arranged for packing boxes to be delivered. These boxes were later filled with bloodied items, like the ornaments she wielded to commit the crime. On November 4th, she conversed with a female friend to confirm her plan to fly to San Francisco on November 17th for cosmetic surgery on her breasts. On November 5th, Nancy hired workmen to transport Robert's body, wrapped in the carpet, to a storeroom. A workman vividly recalled the carpet gave off a strong, peculiar smell, similar to that of salted fish. Before and after the sinister event, Nancy and Del Piore exchanged frequent calls, as revealed by the prosecutor, who presented the phone numbers dialed from Nancy's cell phone in court. After the heinous act, Nancy visited a doctor, alleging assault by her husband. She told the same story to her father, Ira K. Shin, who promptly flew to Hong Kong to support her. On November 6th, Nancy filed a police report claiming assault. During the trial, Nancy also claimed that she had contemplated taking her own life due to the constant abuse she faced from Robert, but resisted since she was fearful of the impact on her children. To get better, she looked for help and visited several doctors in Hong Kong and secured prescriptions for various medications, including the notorious date drug Rohypnol, as well as a painkiller, a sedative, an antidepressant, and a sleeping medication. All these substances were later found in Robert's system. After presenting these mysterious events in court, the judges were left to make their decision. Despite her attorney's efforts, this strategy failed, as prosecutors highlighted Nancy's marital deception, internet searches for drug combinations, and clear attempts to conceal the crime. Following a 65-day trial, the jury, with 5 men and 2 women, unanimously pronounced her guilty after 8 hours of deliberation on September 1, 2005. Consequently, she was sentenced to life in prison and entered the Hong Kong correctional system on the same day. Kizel appealed her conviction in April 2008. That petition was rejected, confined to a 7-foot by 7-foot cell in the high-security Thailand institution for women near the Chinese border. A sign on her door had the label, "Lifer." After her appeal proved unsuccessful, she planned to explore the option of serving the rest of her sentence in a U.S. regardless. This marked a significant departure from her once privileged life at Parkview, where Robert Kissel's silver Porsche Carrera still sat unclaimed in the parking lot. But there was still more that would unfold in the legal battle. After lodging an appeal with the Court of Final Appeal on January 12, 2010, Nancy Kissel was granted a retrial after the court cited the prosecution's use of inadmissible evidence in the original trial. The retrial began on January 10, 2011. Sensing their client's difficult position, the defense tried to halt the proceedings for Nancy to enter a plea, but their request was denied. After a long 10-week trial on March 25, 2011, the jury declared her guilty once again. Nancy Kissel returned to her cell at Tail and Women's Prison near the Chinese border, serving a mandatory life sentence. No additional appeal was filed by Nancy's lawyers. In April 2011, they submitted a request for her transfer to a U.S. prison under an international inmate exchange program that allows prisoners to serve sentences in their native countries. Simon Young, the director of the University of Hong Kong Center for Comparative and Public Law, mentioned that local authorities must communicate to the U.S. government the minimum time Kissel needs to serve before becoming eligible for parole for the transfer to proceed. In 2014, the Court of Final Appeal dismissed an appeal from her for the second conviction. During the same year, Nancy Kissel expressed having no regrets about her husband's death and revealed infrequent communication with her children in Seattle, Washington. Now, turning our attention to the fate of the couple's innocent children. After their father's tragic murder and the imprisonment of their mother, they briefly stayed with their maternal grandfather, Ira Kishin, in Winnetka, outside Chicago. While they were there, a custody dispute emerged between Robert's two siblings, Andrew Kissel and his wife, Haley Kissel, and Robert's sister, Jane Kissel Clayton, along with her husband, Richard. Jane, residing with her family outside Seattle, became a central figure in this legal struggle for the children, Elaine, 11, June, 8, and Reese, 6. Their mother, Nancy Kissel, being in jail, made the inheritance of Robert's wealth a prominent aspect of the custody battle. It was estimated that the three children were receiving a monthly income of at least $10,000 from their father's estate for their living expenses. In December 2003, Andrew and his wife Haley sought temporary custody of Robert's three children, which the court granted in January 2004. During this time, Andrew faced legal challenges after being accused of defrauding a New York co-op board of millions of dollars. This included lawsuits from lenders, business partners, a title insurance company, and a yacht dealership. And during problems in Andrew's work life, he also started to face one at home. Haley, his wife, filed for divorce in March 2005. During these legal battles, Haley moved out and took custody of their two children and temporary custody of Robert and Nancy's three. The court-appointed attorney, Michael Colazano, described Andrew as a recovering alcoholic. Eventually, after legal proceedings, custody of the children was granted to their aunt and uncle, Jane Clayton and her husband. After these unsettling events, an unimaginable tragedy struck that left everyone, especially the Kissel family, in shock. On April 3, 2006, Robert's brother, Andrew Kissel, was discovered with 5 stab wounds to his neck. The eerie similarity to Robert's murder raised chilling questions. It seemed someone had tried to end their lives in a hauntingly similar manner with the same method of attack. The mystery deepened, leaving everyone puzzled. Could these murders and attempts be connected? Was Nancy Kissel really the killer, or was someone targeting the Kissel family? This case takes us to Anchorage, Alaska in the United States of America, back to the summer of 2019. Anchorage is a busy city, home to nearly half of the Alaskan population. There's plenty to do there with gorgeous hiking routes, peaceful countrysides, lots of wildlife and ski resorts. It's the perfect place for as quiet or busier getaway as you could want. Amongst the almost 300,000 people that called this place home, lived the very big and very close Hoffman family, who all lived together in an East Anchorage trailer. On the 2nd of June, Timothy Hoffman had started to grow concerned about his daughter, Cynthia. She had not replied to any messages or answered any calls for several hours. Although she was 19, Cynthia faced developmental and learning challenges, meaning she worked at a 7th grade level. Her being out of contact for even just a short while was alarming, and Timothy knew something was wrong. On the first weekend of June 2019, the Hoffman family spent some time working on a friend's campervan together. On the 2nd of June, Cynthia made plans to meet up with her sister and get her part of the money she had earned. She sent a text message to her father to say that she was on the way, but she never met her sister that afternoon. Her father called the police, but was told he needed to wait 24 hours and then ring them back. Timothy was upset that they weren't taking it as seriously as they should have been, and said that they didn't understand how vulnerable Cynthia actually was. For someone still so young, she was definitely busy and very determined. As tough a school had been for her, Cynthia had persevered and graduated in 2018. As well as working as an apprentice for Timothy, who worked in building and construction, she was earning extra money at a restaurant, studying in a post-high school skills program, and was close to getting her driver's permit as well. Timothy and Cynthia shared an incredibly close bond, and he said she was most definitely a daddy's girl. He recalled that she was always working hard to overcome her challenges and looking to make her family proud of her with everything that she did. All she wanted was my blessing and approval, and I gave that to her a lot, he said. Frustrated with the police department, Timothy started contacting news stations and set off on his motorbike, going through the nearby woods and bike paths, searching everywhere. When she didn't come home the first day, I knew something was wrong, and then all I could think about was the knock on the door, he said. He had many people reaching out to see if they could help, and he gladly accepted them all. But one set of messages in particular left him more confused than grateful. He had received several messages from one of Cynthia's closest friends, Angela. Angela said that Cynthia had asked her to drop her off at Polar Bear Park, something that she had agreed to do, but she hadn't seen her since then. She said she had last seen her at 4 p.m. on the 2nd of June, wearing blue jeans, a hoodie, and tennis shoes. Timothy knew this was strange as Cynthia didn't mention this to him or her sister that she was going to meet. In Angela's messages, she said, "Is she okay? I hope she comes home safely. She's my best friend. I'm starting to get worried. I don't trust what she said about that guy. I love her too. I want the best for her and want her to come back. She won't answer me. I think she's ignoring everyone. I know she will come home safe." Timothy had no idea what guy Angela was talking about, and even though he pushed for clarification, he was none the wiser. The police were now looking into Cynthia's disappearance, and Timothy passed these messages on to them in the hope it might help them find some answers. Little did he know, the number was not linked to an Angela. It was linked to an 18-year-old named Denali Bremer. Denali and Cynthia were actually close friends and had met through school. They often posed in selfies together on social media with the captions reading BFF. So why she had given a different name was confusing. Just one day later, on the evening of June the 3rd, the Anchorage Police Department were contacted by a woman named Nicole. Nicole said that on the evening of the 2nd of June, the date Cynthia was last seen, Nicole's daughter and someone Nicole knew as Anthony were both at her house. Shockingly, Anthony had told her that Cynthia was dead and that he was responsible, and her daughter was none other than Denali Bremer, who also apparently went by Angela. After this, the pair left the house and she hadn't seen them since. Given what Anthony had said, she was now concerned for her daughter's safety as well. Police located the pair and started digging into these claims. 4th of June, early evening. Knock Timothy had been painfully anticipating came at the door. The minute he saw the officers, he said, "She's dead, isn't she?" Detectives confirmed that they had just found his daughter's body. Cynthia had been discovered along the Eklutna riverbank. She was bound with duct tape, and she had been shot in the back of the head before being pushed into the river. Officers believed that she had been killed before Timothy had even reported her as missing. And it is unconfirmed whether or not the shot killed her instantly or if she was still alive when she was put into the water. It was impossible for the Hoffmans to contemplate who on earth would want to do this to Cynthia. She never spoke of having any problems with anyone. She had lots of friends and was so loved by those around her. Before long, a web of lies would start to unravel, showing the twisted and disturbing reality of what had happened and why. And given what Denali's mother Nicole had told the police, officers were only looking at Denali and Anthony for answers. Anthony was actually a 16-year-old called Caden McIntosh, a teen living on the streets at the time. On the 5th of June, Caden McIntosh was arrested, and 2 days later, so was Denali Bremer. The pair were initially quiet and Denali was even granted bail, but after her phone was looked at, she was pulled back in and the pair would soon start to talk. It quickly became apparent that Denali had attempted to delete threads of messages, which fortunately be easily recovered. She had been texting someone called Tyler, a man she had started an online relationship with, and the conversations between the pair were extremely dark. Tyler told her he was very wealthy and lived in Kansas, almost 4,000 miles away. The police found child pornography on Denali's phone as well, and a string of explicit images of children that Denali had sent to Tyler for his approval. The more the pair spoke, the more disturbing things became. Tyler soon told Denali to sexually assault an 8-year-old and send him videos of it. After this, he wanted her to assault a 14-year-old as well. The text threads between the pair were graphic. One message from Tyler read, "So are you going to the 14-year-old? Gonna go by weed first." Denali replied, "I want to get her high for it so she doesn't fight me. I love you. Soon we can rape together." After these assaults, Tyler texted Denali and told her he wanted to see more. He wanted her to rape and murder someone. In exchange, he said that he would pay her $9 million. Denali then set about recruiting people to help her and get the plan in motion. She finally told police that she and Caden had picked Cynthia up and drove out about 20 miles away from her home using a car owned by another teenager that she had promised $500,000 of the alleged money to, a 19-year-old called Caleb Leland. This gave police a fourth name to look at, But little did they know, this would soon become more. Denali said that she, Caden and Cynthia all drove around smoking marijuana together, something Timothy said he didn't see his daughter doing at all, and was likely pressured into doing in the first place, if it was even true. After this, they drove out to a parking lot near the Thunderbird Falls Trail with the intention of going on a hike. But instead of following the trail, they abandoned it and followed another path that ran alongside the Eklutna River. They all walked along until they found an isolated clearing. Denardi claimed that the three of them agreed to duct tape each other and take photographs as part of a joke or prank. In the clearing, was bound by her ankles and wrists and had tape put over her mouth. Cynthia soon realized this was not a joke and started to panic. She started shouting that she was going to call the police. Denali held a gun to her head, which she eventually let Caden take off her. Caden then shot Cynthia in the back of the head. In Caden's interview, he admitted to duct taping Cynthia and said that he had blacked out, but remembered shooting her and pushing her into the river. As much as Denali was trying to distance herself, she had been documenting the whole ordeal on her phone, sending photographs and videos to Tyler via Snapchat, showing that she was someone who was very much involved. Although Tyler said he wanted to see a rape as well as a murder, there was no evidence to suggest that Cynthia had been sexually assaulted. To the police, Denali spoke of being afraid of Caden, implying she was following his suit, as well as being tricked by Tyler. However, Denali had not only brought and held the loaded gun, she photographed and filmed the entire thing, and had engaged in numerous conversations with Tyler about all kinds of horrifying things up until that point. Police felt confident that Tyler and Denali were ringleaders together. After Cynthia had been pushed into the river, Denali and Caden then went back to the car and made a pact to contact Cynthia's family to say that she had been dropped off at the park. After this, they set about burning and disposing of Cynthia's purse, clothes, and ID in Lions Park. In northeast Anchorage, they even attempted to burn the gun. Denali later texted Tyler and said, "I wish I never made a deal with you in the first place. We can meet, but once I see a cop, I'm telling him or her that I made you rape people and kill Cece." But as the police already suspected, Tyler wasn't who he claimed he was either. The man behind the screen was actually 21-year-old Darren Schillmiller. He wasn't a millionaire and he wasn't living in Kansas. He lived in New Salisbury, Indiana. When he was tracked down and questioned, he confessed to everything, including convincing Denali that he was a millionaire and that he would pay her to assault and kill Cynthia. He also admitted that he and Denali had discussed murdering someone else after Cynthia was dead. Those that knew Darren Schillmiller or Tyler said his dark thoughts had always been obvious. When he was a teenager, he had started asking very young girls to send him explicit photographs, often making up fake profiles and going by fake names online as well. People described him as off and creepy. As he got older, he started asking people to send him photos of their children, sometimes while they were being changed or bathed. He also had a fetish for dirty diapers and often wanted to see photographs of those too. He had previously been the subject of a child pornography investigation, but no charges were filed and the case collapsed. When he told Denali he wanted her to find someone to kill, she made the choice quickly. She chose Cynthia because she was her closest friend. She thought it would be easier to use the trust that Cynthia had for her to lure her away without her questioning it. Timothy said, "Her disability just made her want to have friends. That's all she wanted, was just to be her friend." Detectives subpoenaed Verizon for Darren's phone data, and all the footage of the minors Denali had heard up until that point were found, along with more evidence that highlighted Darren's sick perversions. They also uncovered a Snapchat video that Denali had uploaded after Cynthia had been killed, in which she said, "I'm sorry everybody, my family, my friends. I guess you will hear from me when you hear from me, but I won't be back for a long time. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do it." In the background of the video, Caden could be seen pacing around as well. A grand jury would soon indict 6 individuals in Cynthia Hoffman's case: Darren Schillmiller, Denali Brahma, Caden McIntosh, Caleb Leland, who had given them the car, and 2 other teens, who have not been named due to their ages. They were all indicted on charges of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and murder in the second degree. 16-year-old Caden was charged as an adult, and as well as murder, he also faced 4 counts of tampering with evidence. The two juveniles, a male and a female, admitted to knowing about and being present for the planning of the murder in exchange for a cut of the money. Caleb was also accused of sexually assaulting the female juvenile suspect and faces additional charges of sexual assault and sexual abuse of a minor, as well as murder charges. Darren and Denali were indicted on more counts of solicitation to commit murder in the first degree and then faced further charges of production of child pornography, conspiracy to produce child pornography, distribution of child pornography, and the coercion and enticement of a minor. All 6 individuals entered pleas of not guilty. Denali addressed the court and even spoke of having a child herself, something which had not been mentioned before this point. She said, "Don't want my daughter knowing that her mom grew up a killer because I don't see myself as one." Denali's sister spoke to the media and said they were devastated that she could be involved in something like this. Denali is the 3rd child of 5 girls. Her older sisters, Rebecca and Branna, said that all of the children had been removed from the care of their mother at different points, and the abuse reached a tipping point when the man living with their mother at the time killed their 2-month-old baby sister, Gabrielle. Denali was adopted in her early childhood, but both her sisters said the trauma may have lingered and potentially might have been the cause of several issues in adulthood. "We all had really hard lives, and I feel like she took the wrong road with the wrong people who didn't care about her, and now she's paying the ultimate cost," said Brenner. The pending hearing and trials have all been delayed and postponed several times for various reasons. 56 gigabytes of material and over 100,000 pages of evidence and cell phone data was handed over in court, which is a huge amount to dissect and go through. This, coupled with lockdowns due to the pandemic, has pushed the trial dates back, and in January 2020, it was announced it would be some time before the dates were set. Timothy Hoffman said he would be in court at every opportunity, adding, "Nothing really disappoints me. I am prepared for a long journey. It was a shocking and sick case in every imaginable way. Murder, sexual assault, catfishing, manipulation, greed, and the ultimate betrayal in the most devastating way." Cynthia Hoffman was a determined young woman, someone who had faced challenges and adversity and had pushed through all of it, determined to always give her all and make her family proud. Her life came to an end in a terrifying way at the hands of someone she trusted and would never have doubted. Lynette Joy Sims was born in New South Wales, Australia in 1948. In 1965, she met Chris Dawson at a high school function. The pair got married in 1970 at St. Jude's Church, Randwick, in Sydney, and later had 2 children. Chris and his twin brother Paul played professional rugby league football for the next few years. After ending their rugby careers, the Dawson brothers found employment as physical education teachers. Chris worked at Cromer High School near Sydney. Both Chris and Paul are alleged to have regularly engaged in illicit behavior with female students at their respective schools. In 1981, Chris groomed and slept with a student named Joanne Curtis. Joanne temporarily moved into the Dawson family residence in Bayview in 1982. Chris told Lynette about Joanne's problems at her home with her family as a reason as to why she had to stay at their house. Chris was 32 years old then, and Joanne was 16. Lynette was phoned by her mom on January 8, 1982. This was the last time they would communicate with each other. She planned to meet her mother and family at the North Bridge Baths the following day, but never arrived. Chris didn't report his wife missing until February 18, 1982, 6 weeks after she had vanished. Joanne then permanently moved in with Chris. When questioned by investigators, Chris said that Lynette left after marital problems caused over her spending. Later, Chris suggested that she had joined a religious organization. In 1983, he finalized divorce proceedings against Lynette and married Joanne Curtis the following year. Some investigators believe that Chris took Lynette's life, but that was hard to prove without a body. The first inquest, held in February of 2001, the deputy state coroner Jan Stevenson determined that Lynette is not alive anymore and that the person responsible was someone she knew. A second inquest, held in February 2003 by state coroner Karl Milanovanovich, recommended that Chris be charged with ending Lynette's life. The New South Wales Director of Public Prosecutions, Nicholas Cowdery, refused to prosecute Chris Dawson, citing the lack of evidence. In April of 2018, following extensive investigations, New South Wales Police requested the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions to review its brief of evidence. Then, in December 2018, Chris Dawson was arrested in Queensland in connection to Lynette's case. Dawson still claimed he was innocent and delayed the trial several times because, according to him, there was a risk that members of the jury could have prejudged his guilt due to widespread publicity about the case. In May of 2022, Justice Robert Beach-Jones granted Dawson's application for a judge-alone trial after he argued the extensive pretrial publicity meant a jury was unsuitable in his case. The trial began on May 9th. The prosecution claimed that Dawson took Lynette's life because of his desire for an unfettered relationship with Joanne Curtis. The defense acknowledged that Dawson may have failed his wife, but that she had left and abandoned the family of her own accord and suggested she may have created a new life. The defense relied on a number of witnesses who claimed to have seen Lynette since her disappearance. On August 30th, 2022, Justice Harrison found 74-year-old Chris Dawson guilty, and he delivered his reasons as well. He found Dawson had lied on a number of occasions, including about his relationship with Joanne, about his desire to resume a relationship with his wife, and about receiving phone calls from Lynette after she disappeared. Justice Harris rejected the alleged sightings of Lynette as wholly unreliable and found there was a most compelling body of evidence to reject the hypothesis that Lynette Dawson abandoned her family. He was satisfied beyond reasonable doubt that Lynette Dawson is not alive anymore as a result of a conscious and voluntary act by Chris Dawson. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the depths of unsolved mysteries. Cold cases not only challenge our understanding of the past, but also ignite our curiosity and determination for answers. Remember to subscribe to stay updated on our latest investigations. And if you have any information regarding the cases we've covered, don't hesitate to reach out. Together, we can shed light on the shadows of the past and bring closure to those who seek it. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and never stop seeking the truth.